So last week, we learned that two governors, one from Montana and one from the state of New York, decided to unilaterally enforce net neutrality via executive order. And this week, we've got even more bad news for FCC Chairman Ajit Pai, because California is on the cusp of becoming the first state to enforce net neutrality by passing legislation that mandates it. So according to John Brodkin of Ars Technica, the California State Senate yesterday approved a bill to impose net neutrality restrictions on internet service providers, challenging the Federal Communications Commission's attempt to preempt such rules. The FCC's repeal of its own net neutrality rules included a provision to preempt state and municipal governments from enforcing similar rules at the local level, but the governors of Montana and New York have signed executive orders to enforce net neutrality, and several states are considering net neutrality legislation. California may be the closest to passing such legislation after yesterday's Senate approval of SB 460, a bill proposed by Kevin De Leon of Los Angeles. The bill passed 21-12 with all 21 A's coming from Democrats. The bill is now being moved to the state assembly, where Democrats have a 53-25 majority over Republicans. The bill would prohibit home and mobile internet providers from blocking lawful content, applications, services, or non-harmful devices, except in cases of reasonable network management. Violations would be punishable under the state's existing consumer protection laws, which allow for injunctions and financial damages. The California bill would also prohibit state agencies from buying internet service from an ISP unless that provider certifies under penalty of perjury that it will not engage in the activities banned by the bill. So this sends a really strong message that California is not messing around when it comes to net neutrality. Now, to be honest, I don't know if this law will hold up in court in the event it is challenged because, again, the FCC, part of their order preempted states, basically blocked them from passing their own net neutrality rules. So I don't know if this will hold up, but the message it sends is really important. And what's unique is that California is being especially bold because with legislation that's being considered in other states, with the executive orders issued by Montana and New York's governors, they kind of indirectly mandate net neutrality by not necessarily saying, you know, if you violate net neutrality, you're breaking the law. What they do instead is say, well, we're just not going to give you a contract if you don't abide by the principles of net neutrality. But California is just saying, no, it's completely illegal to violate net neutrality. So I absolutely love this because it's another way that states are fighting back against the FCC. And let me remind you, the FCC is already being sued by, 21 states? I think it was 17 after they voted to repeal net neutrality. Now I think it's 21. We have governors enforcing net neutrality via executive order, and now states passing legislation basically defying the FCC. It's fantastic. But again, when it comes to the issue of net neutrality, I do really want to encourage people to show up to city councils and demand public broadband, because that's one way that you implement a permanent fix to the issue that is net neutrality. Because if you own the internet, if your tax dollars fund it directly, then it belongs to the people. There's nothing internet service providers like Comcast and Verizon can do to violate net neutrality. It's yours. And also, if you want your governor to protect net neutrality, all you have to do is call his or her office and let them know that there's been 2 cases now where the governor of Montana and New York have decided to enforce net neutrality via executive order. What's your governor's excuse? So it's really important that we keep the pressure on, because as the months go by, as time passes since the FCC's December 14th, 2017 repeal, they're banking on us losing momentum. They're hoping that we eventually become complacent and stop caring about this issue. But we need to demonstrate that we weren't playing games when we said we were going to fight to defend net neutrality. And we need to let our lawmakers know, the people who represent us both in the national legislature and our state legislatures, that we're never backing down from this issue. We're never going to stop demanding net neutrality, and we're never going to accept no net neutrality as the norm. So I find this incredibly encouraging, but please make sure that if you really truly support net neutrality, You put in the time yourself to make sure that your state protects net neutrality. You can call your governor, your state representative, your state senator, and certainly call who's representing you in Congress. Because the Congressional Review Act, which is a resolution that would nullify the FCC's repeal, it's going to be voted on in the Senate. I don't know when, but it is going to be voted on, and it's going to head to the House afterwards. And it has to pass both the House and the Senate if it's even going to arrive on Trump's desk. Now, yes, ultimately it may fail. He might veto it. In fact, he's probably going to veto it. But that might raise awareness about the issue. So, either way, we have to fight. And I like that states are fighting back. We're not rolling over. We're not just going to take it. Net neutrality has always been the norm, and we are fighting to keep it that way.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.